Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, this is my co-host Teddy, and today we're putting two big boys up against each other. In the red corner we have the AMD Ryzen 7 1700, a very powerful CPU. And in the blue corner we have the Intel i7 8700K, which is also a very powerful CPU. So let's dive right into it then and talk about the differences between these two CPUs. So the 1700 is a 8-core, 16-thread Ryzen CPU, coming in with a 3 GHz base clock and a 3.7 GHz turbo clock, and it is fully unlocked, so you can overclock the CPU. The 8700K, by comparison, is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. It's a Coffee Lake CPU. Both of these CPUs are 14 nanometer, by the way. It's coming in with a 3.7 GHz base clock and a 4.7 GHz turbo clock. That's pretty high. And it is also unlocked, so you can overclock the CPU. The 8700K you can, the 8700 you cannot. So let's talk about the test rigs then, what we tested out these CPUs on. So I tested the 1700 with the Asus Prime X370 Pro motherboard. This is a really solid entry-level X370 board that I reviewed a little while back, and it's just really solid. So if you're wanting a good X370 that's, you know, pretty much the same price as an expensive B350, then that's a good one to go for. The 8700K was tested with the MSI Z370 Gaming Pro Carbon. This is also a fantastic motherboard, a very solid choice if you're looking for a Z370. Now, as far as memory goes, so tested with the same 16GB G.Skill DDR4 memory kit running at 2933 MHz for all the tests here today. They ran the same GPU and the same drivers. That was the MSI Gaming X GTX 1080 Ti. And of course they used the same cooler, the Deepcool GAMAX 120mm air cooler, to keep things nice and fair. Now let's talk about the overclocking and the temperatures then. So overclocking wise, the 1700 is very typical for a Ryzen CPU. It went up to 4 GHz. That's about the standard. Maybe you get a real good one, you might get like 4.1 out of it. If you got a real golden chip like I did with the 1900X a little while back, I got that up to 4.3. But yeah, 3.94 GHz is about standard for a Ryzen CPU. The 8700K went all the way up to 4.9 GHz. So a bit of a jump over the turbo clock. That's on all cores though, remember, as well. I think I could have got 5 GHz or 5.1, but as you'll see soon with the temperatures, I just couldn't go any higher. Temps wise, I was limited. Speaking of which, I did the temperature testing in IDA 64. I ran the CPU stress test for 5 minutes. I'll put the results up here for you now, and you can see that, yeah, the 1700 is soldered down, remember, whereas the 8700K runs a pretty not good, I could use worse words, thermal interface material, which Intel just for some reason refuses to change. So that's the big difference there in the temperatures. The 1700 overclocks was ran at the same temperature as the 8700K at its stock clock speed. Really, Intel? Come on, guys.
Okay, I found this on the web for a 1700 o'clock Wednesday ran at the same temperature as the 8700K and its stop clock speed. Take a look.
Thanks, Siri. Thanks for interrupting the video. That was really cool. Go somewhere else. I put it on silent as well. I don't know what's going on. So, where was I? Should I leave that in the video? Yeah, whatever. So, yeah, temperature-wise, the 1700, much better, to be expected, even though it is an 8-core CPU. But of course, clock speed, big advantage there for the 8700K. So let's move on now to the benchmarks then. So I have retired Shadow of Mordor, my old trusty benchmark that I've been running since I started the channel. That's gone now and replaced by its successor, Shadow of War, but all the other benchmarks are the same. I am going to switch out Dirt Rally, I think, in the future with maybe something like Total War, Warhammer, and I may add in another game there. But yeah, so let's jump into the benchmarks then and see how these two CPUs perform. So at the stock clock speeds, the 8700K absolutely runs away with it. The low stock speeds of the 1700 really hurt it here. Once we overclock both the CPUs, the 1700 does narrow it a bit, but it's still a big win for the 8700K. This is just purely because of clock speed, right? The 8700K at 4.9 or 5 gigahertz, that is seriously powerful on all 6 cores. Whereas at 1700, it's limited to 4 gigahertz. Now, I don't want to make this video too complicated, but basically the reason for this is it's just design differences, manufacturing differences there. What I hope in the future with, say, Ryzen 2 would be, longer legs on the Ryzen CPUs in terms of those clock speeds. Could you imagine a Ryzen CPU at 5 gigahertz like the 1700? Imagine the results then. It would be very, very powerful. But with the CPUs we have here today, it's a big win for the 8700K just because of that very high clock speed. Which brings us nicely into the conclusion. And what do I make of these two CPUs? So price-wise, right now in New Zealand, you can pick up the Ryzen 7 1700 for 475 New Zealand dollars over at Playtech. Now if you want to pick up the 8700K, it'll set you back 649 New Zealand dollars. So that's quite a bit more. It's $175 more than the 1700. Not only that, but with the 1700 you can get away with running a B350 motherboard if you want to. Those are vastly cheaper than the Z370 you will be required to run with your 8700K. So also a bit cheaper there on the motherboards. And you can get away with the stock cooler on the 1700. I didn't test it here today, but I have in previous videos, and it does a very good job. With the 8700K, you're either going to need to de-lid it, or you have to run a pretty good cooler. As I said, with the 120mm air cooler, which I think is a pretty fair one for a lot of people to use, pretty common thing for people to run, I could get 4.9, and the temps, as you saw, were going up into the 90s. If I tried go to 5 gigahertz, it was going up to 100 degrees. So you're going to need to run like some pretty good liquid cooling or a big boy air cooler on the 8700K if you're thinking about overclocking it very high. So with all those considerations, which one do I recommend? So if money is not a factor to you, or a big factor, you know, you got plenty of money, you're a programmer, something like that, you just want the most powerful gaming CPU you can get right now, then get the 8700K. There's no two ways about it, guys. It is the more powerful CPU, especially if you overclock it, as I said, maybe up to 5 gigahertz, 5.1 or something like that. It is extremely powerful. But for the people out there that, you know, don't have that kind of money to just throw around or have to be a bit more value conscious, I would probably say go with the 1700, especially if you're gaming at, say, 1440p and above, because there the difference is, you know, minimal. It's just going to be much cheaper overall than the 8700K, and it's not that far behind. But that is just my opinion. So I want to kick it to you guys. What do you think? Do you think the 8700K is just the clear winner? I mean, it did win in the benchmarks quite handily, but it is coming with that higher price tag, and you got to run a Z370 motherboard with it. Or do you think it's just the 1700 is just the big winner here? You know, much better value. I want to know what you guys think. I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already, and like the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.